You have to know what's the meaning of the chemical reactions. What are chemical reactions? They will not ask you to define the chemical reactions in the final exam, but it's important for you to know what does it mean. Chemical reaction, okay, occur when two or more substances combine chemically together. For example, like when A combines chemically with B to form AB. Here, AB or this compound is completely different from the reactants A and B. For any chemical reaction to start, it needs activation energy. For example, if you would like to make cookies, you add the ingredients together. For example, we use flour, we use eggs, we use also butter. Then we mix them together to make the dough. What we should do, you have to put this dough in the oven. طيب, why should we put it in the oven? We put it in the oven because we add heat or we add energy. Okay, so what's the meaning of the term activation energy? And it's a very important. Activation energy. Activation energy is the minimum amount of energy required for a chemical reaction to begin or to start. Yani for any chemical reaction, you have to add energy. The minimum amount of this energy is called activation energy. Again, you must memorize the meaning of the activation energy. But activation energy is the minimum amount of energy needed to start a chemical reaction. Okay, طيب. How can we represent this activation energy using a graph? Firstly, this graph, the one that I will draw now, this one, we call it the graph that represents the activation energy. طبعا any graph has two axes, the x-axis and y-axis. What about the x-axis? X-axis represents the progress of the reaction. Progress of reaction. And y-axis represents the energy or the potential energy. Okay, here these are called reactants. What's the meaning of reactants? Reactants are the substances that they are found, of course, before the arrow or that they start the chemical reaction. For example, here the reactants, they are A and B. So here reactants or A plus B. We call them reactants again. What happens? For A and B to combine chemically together, they need minimum amount of energy, which is the activation energy. So the height of this curve represents the activation energy. Okay, طبعا then they form the products. Here are the products. Okay, so this part, this one, this part represents the activation energy. So girls, the activation energy, again, the meaning of the activation energy is the minimum amount of energy needed to start the chemical reaction. What about the chemical reactions? Do all of the chemical reactions are the same? No. That's why we classify the chemical reactions into two types. The first one, the first kind of the chemical reactions, we call them exothermic reactions. And the second type of the chemical reactions, endothermic reactions. What's the difference between them? Exothermic chemical reactions, exothermic chemical reaction, exo means exit. So this type of the chemical reactions, they release energy. So this is the first difference between them. So exothermic, exit. So exothermic chemical reactions, they release energy. Endo means inside or take in. Okay, so endothermic chemical reactions, this type of the chemical reactions, they absorb energy. So this is the main difference between them. Okay, what else? You have to differentiate between them using a graph. Let's start with the exothermic chemical reactions. I will use the same graph here, the two axes, X and Y. X-axis represents the progress or the direction of the reaction, and here the potential energy, and here direction of reaction. Okay, what about the exothermic chemical reaction? In the exothermic chemical reaction, you have to know that the potential energy of the reactants is higher than the potential energy of the products. يعني here this side, and in the final exam they will ask you to label the graph or to label this curve. Okay, so here this line represents the reactants. Okay, and they combine chemically together to form the products on the other side. From the graph, the potential energy of the reactants, potential energy of reactants is higher than the potential energy of products. Okay, طيب. Also, they will ask you to find or to label the activation energy. Where is the activation energy? Here, the activation energy. So here, this arrow represents the activation energy. Okay, I will shade it to understand or to find or to know where is the activation energy. So the shaded part with the yellow of this curve represents the activation energy. Okay, this for the exothermic chemical reaction. What about the endothermic? How can we represent the endothermic chemical reaction using a graph? I will use the same.
Miss, it is the opposite.
It's the opposite, yes. So this is the x-axis and this one the y-axis. Again here طبعا direction of reaction, and here the potential energy. طيب. What about the reactants? This line represents the reactants. I will write here reactants. Okay, and here the products. Okay, طيب. What do you observe here? Here the potential energy of the reactants is lower than the potential energy of the product. So the potential energy of reactants is lower than the potential energy of the products. طيب when they ask you to label the activation energy, انتبهي, where is the activation energy? This arrow represents the activation energy, and I will shade it with the yellow color, this one. Okay, so again, to summarize it, the two main types of the chemical reactions: exothermic chemical reaction, endothermic chemical reaction. Exothermic exit, release energy. Endothermic in, take in, absorb energy. Also, regarding the potential energy, the exothermic chemical reaction, the potential energy of the reactants is higher than the potential energy of the products, while in the endothermic chemical reaction, the potential energy of the reactants is lower than the potential energy of the products. طيب, what about this activation energy? Can we reduce the activation energy? Can we minimize the amount of the activation energy needed for a chemical reaction to start? Yes, we can do. Okay, so to reduce or to lower the activation energy, we use something which is called a catalyst. So, what's the meaning of a catalyst? Catalyst is a substance that lower the activation energy, and in the bodies of the living organisms they have natural catalysts. These catalysts that they are made in the cells of the living organisms, we call them enzymes. So what are enzymes? Enzymes are called biological catalysts. Okay, طيب, why do we call it biological? Biological because it's made in the cells of the living organisms. Made in the living organisms cells. يعني it's made up in the cells of the plants. It's made up in the cells of the animals, the cells of the humans, bacteria. يعني they are made in the cells of the living organisms. That's why we call them biological. طيب, why do we call them catalyst? We call them catalyst because they speed up the rate of chemical reactions. They make the reaction happen faster, speed up the rate of the chemical reactions. Okay, طيب, how does it happen? The catalyst or the enzymes, they speed up the rate of the chemical reactions by lowering the activation energy. So the main function of these enzymes, they lower the activation energy, they reduce the activation energy, or they minimize the activation energy. طيب, let's back to this graph one more time. I told you in this reaction, this arrow represents the activation energy. طيب, here this curve represents the activation energy without a catalyst or without enzyme. But when we add enzymes, what will happen to this activation energy? The activation energy will decrease. So here the black curve represents the activation energy without enzymes, while the pink one represents the activation energy with enzymes. So the enzymes, they lower or they minimize the activation energy needed for the chemical reactions. Also pay attention in the exam, they will ask you about it. يعني for example, they will label the curve y and the curve x, and they may ask you about the difference between them. So your answer will be curve y represents the activation energy without the enzyme, while x represents the activation energy with the help of the enzymes or without the enzymes, because you know that enzymes, they lower the activation energy. Okay. طيب, what about also, or what we should know about the enzymes? Enzymes also, they are made up of proteins. Enzymes are proteins. These proteins, they lower the activation energy or they minimize the activation energy. طبعا the enzymes, they are very important for the living organisms because many reactions, they may take long time to take place without the enzymes. If with the presence of the enzymes will speed them up or will make them take less time. Okay. طيب, what about the mechanism of the enzyme? To understand the mechanism of the enzyme, you have to know that again, enzymes are proteins, and as you know that the protein has 3D shape of three-dimensional shape. So this is the enzyme. Okay. So the whole, yani this drawing or this shape represents the enzyme. Each enzyme has an active site. Where is the active site of the enzyme? This part is called active site. Okay. طيب, what's the meaning of the active site? Active site is a specific region on the enzyme, خلاص, where the substrate binds and the reaction takes place. يعني here, this enzyme, and this is the substrate, we call it substrate, substrate or the reactants. Okay. As you see here, this substrate bind to the active site or enter the active site because طبعا, as you know, they have a complementary shape. Then what happens here? Again, the enzyme and its active site, and here the substrate bind to the active site of the enzyme. And what do they form? They form enzyme substrate complex. Okay. سهل جدا ان انتوا you can memorize it. You know that this is the enzyme. Just write the word. And this one substrate. Write the word complex. You have to memorize only the word complex. So it's called enzyme substrate complex. You must write the three words. Pay attention. If one of them is missing, you will lose a mark. Okay. Then what happens now? The chemical reaction is taking place on the active site of the enzyme, and what happens by the end? By the end, the products form. يعني this substrate will is broken down and will form the product. So these are called products. Okay. طيب, what about this enzyme? This enzyme will catalyze another chemical reaction. Okay. That's why the enzymes, they are not used up during the reaction. خلاص. They will help another chemical reaction, or they will bind to another substrate. Okay. This diagram is very, very important, and 95% it will come inshallah in the final exam. Okay. So again, the substrate, the substrate bind to the active site of the enzyme. Why do they bind together? Because they have a complementary shape. Complementary shape means they complete each other, okay? Like the puzzle pieces. The puzzle pieces, they don't have the same shape, they have a complementary shape like this. These are the pieces of the puzzle, piece A and the piece B. They have a complementary shape, not the same shape. So they bind together. Type after binding, what do they form? They form enzyme substrate complex. Then, by the end of the reaction, the products form and they leave the active site of the enzyme, and the enzyme catalyze another chemical reaction. Okay? So, in the exam, they may ask you to mention the reason. Enzymes are specific. I will write it here. Enzymes are specific. Okay, طيب. As I mentioned, usually this question is out of three. Okay, طيب. What you should write in the answer. Enzymes are specific because the active site of the enzyme has a specific shape. This is number one. It has a particular shape. يعني for example, this is enzyme A, okay? And this is enzyme B. Look at this substrate. This is the substrate. This substrate combined to enzyme A or enzyme B? Of course, this substrate combined to B. Why? Because they have a complementary shape. So this enzyme, okay, can break down this substrate. That's why we say that each enzyme has a specific active site. This is the active site, or this is the specific active site, okay? So the first point in your answer, you must write that number one, or the first point, each enzyme has a specific active,
Active side.
yes, site. Type. What about this specific active site? This specific active site has a complementary shape. You must memorize this word. Has a complementary shape. So طبعا has a complementary shape, and they bind together and form they form enzyme substrate complex. Okay, by this way you will hit the 3 marks. Okay, you will gain the first mark because you wrote enzymes, they have a specific active site. This active site has a complementary shape to the substrate. This is the second point. The third point, they form enzyme substrate complex. خلاص, perfect, 3 out of 3. You got the full mark. Okay, and it will come in the final exam. Okay, so that's all for the first lesson. So the first lesson, just to summarize it quickly, you have to know what's the meaning of the activation energy. Okay, خلاص, in the minimum amount of energy needed for the chemical reaction or needed to start a chemical reaction. You should know the main kinds of the chemical reactions, the exothermic and the endothermic. Exothermic release energy, endothermic absorb energy. Also, you have to memorize or to understand the graph. Okay, you have to know how to label this curve or how to label this graph. Okay, to the left represent the reactants, to the right the products. In the exothermic, don't forget the potential energy of the reactants is higher than the potential energy of the products, while in the endothermic, the potential energy of the reactants is lower than the potential energy of the products. You must understand it and memorize it, okay? What are enzymes? How can we lower the activation energy? We lower the activation energy by adding a catalyst. طيب, what's the name of the natural catalyst? The name of the natural catalyst, the enzymes. فالenzymes are biological catalysts that speed up the rate of the chemical reactions by lowering the activation energy. طيب, how do enzymes work? Each enzyme has an active site. This active site has a complementary shape to the substrate, so they bind together and form enzyme substrate complex. Then, by the end of the reaction, the products formed and they leave the active site of the enzyme, and the enzyme catalyzes another chemical reaction. Okay? That's all for the first lesson. Now, let's start the second one. The second one, it's about the water and its solutions. The water molecule, our unique water molecule. Okay? Firstly, what about the formula of the water? Water formula H2O. What does it mean? It means that each water molecule has one atom of the oxygen. This is the oxygen atom, and two atoms of the hydrogen. This is the first one, and this is the second one. Okay? They are bonded together with a covalent bond. Okay, just you have to know it. What about the charges on the oxygen and the charge on the hydrogen? By distributing the electrons around the nucleus, you will observe that the density of the electrons around the oxygen is higher than the density of the electrons around the hydrogen. Or simply to summarize it, because of the unequal distribution of the electrons around the oxygen and around the hydrogen, the oxygen has slightly negative electrical charge and the hydrogen has slightly positive electrical charge. لأن الإلكترونز around the oxygen more than the electrons around the hydrogen. I will repeat again. Because of the unequal sharing of the electrons. يعني the electrons are not distributed evenly. يعني الأكسجين has more electrons than the hydrogen. Because of that, the oxygen has a slightly negative electrical charge, while each of the hydrogen, they have slightly positive electrical charge. طيب, then what will happen? The water, يعني let's say that we have a cup of water. This cup of water has only one water molecule? Of course, no. It has many water molecules. طيب, what happened? I will draw more than one water molecule. Again, this is the oxygen, hydrogen, hydrogen, one more, oxygen, hydrogen, and hydrogen. Okay. طيب, what happens, girls? Look here. This oxygen is negative and the hydrogen positive, positive. You have to do it in the exam. Again, oxygen negative, hydrogen positive, positive. طيب, what do you know? You know that the slightly positive electrical charge on the hydrogen attracts the slightly negative electrical charge on the oxygen by this way. طيب, look at the other side, the same. The positive or the slightly positive electrical charge on the hydrogen attracts the slightly negative electrical charge on the oxygen. طيب when they attract to each other they form a bond. This bond is called hydrogen bond. Okay, in the exam they will ask you to draw it. Okay, and also you may label, يعني they may ask you to draw the whole diagram. يعني they may ask you to draw the water molecule. It's very easy, but please don't forget the charges. Okay, so it's very easy. You will draw a circle contains the oxygen or representing the oxygen atom, and you will draw two circles, each represents one hydrogen atom. Then don't forget the charges. Again, don't forget the charges. Oxygen has a slightly negative, while hydrogen has a slightly positive. طيب, if they asked you to draw two molecules of the water, what you should do? You will do the same. You will draw another one, but you must draw the hydrogen bond. This is the hydrogen bond, or they may ask you just to label it. يعني there are two types of the questions, this one or this one. And I'm sure that you can solve any of these questions. Okay? This is the hydrogen bond. Okay. This hydrogen bond يا بنات, it's a weak bond. It's not strong. So, because of this hydrogen bond, the water has unique properties. What are the water properties that they are caused because of this hydrogen bond? The first water property, water properties. The first one, cohesion, and the second one, adhesion. What's the main difference between them? Cohesion, again, water molecules, they are friends. Okay, there is something like a glue between them. This glue is called cohesion. So cohesion is an attraction force. This attraction force between water molecules. يعني water and water, they stick to each other with the cohesion force. Okay, water cohesion. طيب, when the water molecule is attracted to another surface, anything else, it can be a glass, it can be xylem in the plant, any surface. Okay, when the water is attracted to another surface or to another molecule, we call it adhesion. فالadhesion is like a glue. This glue stick the water to anything else. Okay, so in another words we can say that adhesion is an attraction force between water. You can write anything else. It can happen between the water and any other substance. خلاص, I will not write any example. Between water and any other substance. Okay, because of this adhesion, many things or many properties may happen. يعني because of this cohesion property, many things may happen. طيب, because of this cohesion, the water droplets they form on a leaf. And pay attention in this example. Girls, this is the plant leaf. Okay? And let's say that this is the water molecule. Water droplet, sorry. Okay? What causes this dome shape to form? This upper part or this dome shape is formed because of cohesion. يعني you can imagine that the water here, they stick to each other. طيب, how do water molecules stick to each other? They stick to each other by this cohesion. And at the same time, this water droplet stick to the leaf. When this water droplet stick to the leaf, it happens because of adhesion. Okay? ف pay attention or read the question carefully. They are asking only about the water droplet. If they are asking about the formation of the water droplet, so it will be cohesion. لأن الwater droplet is formed because of the cohesion, because of the glue that stick the water molecules together. But if they asked what causes the water droplet to stick to the leaf, it will be adhesion. Okay? لأن أنا عندي الwater هي water is one substance والleaf is another substance for two different substances, so this is the adhesion. One more thing.
Miss, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Miss, they gave us an example like how insects can walk on the water. It is because of the cohesion or the surface tension.
Okay, I will answer your question now. Okay? طيب, look here. Let's say that, or let's imagine there is a lake. This is the lake. Okay? And here, the surface of the water. This surface of the water, it's made up of water molecules. Yani we can say that these water molecules, they present by this way and they stick to each other because of this cohesion. Because of this cohesion, the water surface acts like a thin membrane. يعني this water surface is like a membrane. This membrane help or allow the insects to land on. The formation of this membrane is called surface tension.
Okay, thank you, Miss.
Okay? فالsurface tension حبيبتي is caused by the cohesion. And also in the exam, they will not put both of them in the choices. يعني when they ask you the ability of some insects or strider can walk on the water because, and the choices, you will never find the cohesion and the surface tension in the same question. They may put the cohesion, and if the cohesion is present, you will circle the cohesion. But if the surface tension is present, you will circle the surface tension. Okay? Now we have to know that the surface tension is caused by the cohesion. طيب, what about the adhesion? Regarding the adhesion, okay, طبعا adhesion, it's water stick to something else or to another surface. Let's say that we have a beaker, and this beaker has water, and in the beaker we put a thin tube. What do we call this thin tube? This thin tube, it's
Capillary
called,
reaction.
yeah, capillary tube. Capillary tube, it's a very, very narrow tube. When we put this tube in the water, what happens? The water rises in the tube. Okay, as you see here, the water rises in the tube. When the water rises, or the water rises in this tube because of the adhesion in the water molecules, they stick to the wall of this capillary tube, causing the water to rise. Is it important for the living organisms? Of course, it's very important, especially for the plants. Okay, let's draw our plant together. Our plant has here roots, stem, and this is the leaf. Okay, what's inside the plant? Inside the plant, there is a narrow tube. This narrow tube, we call it xylem. We call it xylem. When the water or when the roots absorb the water from the soil, the water enter the root, then from the root to the xylem. طيب, what causes the water to move in the xylem and they don't move backward because of the gravity? Here, imagine that the water molecules, they are friends, okay? They stick to each other because of the cohesion force, and at the same time they stick to the wall of the xylem by adhesion force. So the cohesion and the adhesion, both of them, they work together to cancel out the gravitational force. Or we can say that the cohesion and the adhesion help the water to move from the roots up to the leaves. That's why the cohesion and the adhesion and also the capillary action, by the way, they are important to transport the water in the plant xylem. Okay? This part about the cohesion of the water transport in the plants. Then after that, the next KPI, it's about, or also it's one property of the water. طبعا احنا عارفين ان water is a universal solvent. Water is a universal solvent. طبعا واحنا when we dissolve something in the water, solution may form. We classify the solutions into three groups, okay? First, acids and base and neutral. Neutral solution. What's the main difference, or how can we classify them? We classify these solutions based on the concentration of the hydrogen and the hydroxide ions. Regarding the acids, they have more hydrogen ions than hydroxide ions. Neutral, the concentration of the hydrogen ions is equal to the concentration of the hydroxide ions. Regarding the bases, the concentration of the hydrogen is lower than the concentration of the hydroxide ions. You must memorize them. فالأسد more hydrogen. Okay, again, acids, they have more hydrogen than hydroxide. Bases, the opposite, more hydroxide than hydrogen. Neutral, they are equal. So how can we measure the acidity or the basic of a substance? To measure the acidity or basic of a substance, we use something, we call it pH scale. This pH scale ranks from 0 till 14. From 0 till 7, so this substance is acid, يعني to be accurate to 6.9. From 7 till 14, this substance or this solution is a base or basic. طيب 1 2 3 4 5 6 8 9 10 11 12 13 and 14. Pay attention here. 7 is neutral. 1 is a strong acid, our strongest acid, while 6 is a weak acid. فمعنى كده إن as the pH decreases, I will write it here and please write it as a note. As the pH decreases, the acidity increases and the concentration of hydrogen ions increases. اوكي، يبقى تاني بنات، يبقى as the pH هنا pH 7 وهنا بتقلل pH. As the pH decreases, what happens? The acidity increases. As I mentioned, the number 1 is the strongest acid. فالacidity increases. And when the acidity increases, it means that the concentration of the hydrogen ions increases. The opposite, okay? When the pH increases, or as the pH increases, the solution becomes more basic and its OH or hydroxide ions concentration increases. It means that number 14, the strong base, while number 8 is a weak base. طيب, which one has more OH? 14 has more hydroxide ions than with a solution with pH 8. Okay, that's all for the water. Any questions?
Oh, thank you, Miss.
No, thank you,
No,
teacher.
thank you.
Okay, حبيبي. طيب. The third lesson, then we'll start solving the related questions together. The third lesson is about building blocks of life. The building blocks of life. Okay. طبعا احنا we took 4 macromolecules. The first one is cancelled. The carbohydrates we are cancelled. So we have now only 3. Let's start with the lipids. First, you should know what are the elements that make up the lipids. Okay, so lipids are made up of 3 elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But when they ask you about the monomers, monomer is the basic unit, the smallest molecule. The monomers of the lipids, each lipid, it's made up of 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol. Let's draw it. Okay, so this is the lipid. This is the lipid. This lipid is broken down into this one is called glycerol, okay, and 3 fatty acids. طيب. What about the importance of the lipids? Okay, importance of the lipids. Number 1, lipids store energy. Okay, number 2, lipids such as phospholipids. خلاص احنا we took the phospholipids. Phospholipids make up the cell membrane. Number 3, okay, please write it or highlight it because you may forget it in the exam. The lipids, they make steroid hormones. Steroid hormones. They are made up of lipids. Okay. طبعا I will show you the lipid molecule. I think okay خلاص I will show it to you from the notes. Okay, but anyways, what you should know now, fatty acids are classified into two groups: saturated and unsaturated. The main difference between them is the bond between the carbon. يعني regarding the saturated fatty acids, this is the first carbon and this is the second carbon. All of the bonds between the carbon, they are single. Look here, this is called single bond. Okay, carbon carbon single bond. طيب, to memorize it in the exam, بنات, look here, saturated starts with the letter S. So the type of the bond is a single bond between carbon. Okay, same letter S, saturated, single. And what about their state at the room temperature? They are solids at the room temperature. Look at the triple S, 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 S. Saturated, single bond, and they are solids. Okay? What about the unsaturated? Unsaturated, it means that between the carbon there is one double bond. Okay, look at this bond is a double bond. Okay, the same way U means that they have a double bond between the carbon. And what about the state? They start with which letter? U. So they are liquids. Look at U and U. Okay, and also the word double has U. For unsaturated, double bond, and they are liquids. By this way, inshallah, you will not forget it. Then the second macromolecule, the proteins. Again, what are the elements? Proteins are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. The word protein has letter N. It means that they have also nitrogen. انتبه ان they have sometimes sulfur. So in the choices, if they wrote in the protein or the amino acid, it's made up or has carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sometimes the sulfur, it will be okay. It will be correct. Okay? What about the monomers of the proteins? Again, monomer is the basic building block, is the smallest unit. Type, what are the monomers of the proteins? The monomers of the
Amino
protein,
acid.
yes, amino acids. طبعا, as you know that there are 20 different amino acids. They bond together in different ways, in particular sequence to form different types of the proteins. But before I show you the structure of the protein molecule, what's the importance of the proteins? Proteins are important. Number one, they are important for the growth, and they are important for tissue repair. This is number one. Type number two, proteins make up your hair. The keratin in the hair, it's made up of protein. Feathers, they are made up of proteins. Number three, the substance that speed up the rate of the chemical reactions, or enzymes. Enzymes are proteins. طبعا, as you know that proteins also make the antibodies, make the hormones, and so on. Well, these are the three main functions of the proteins. طيب, in the exam, and it will come 100%, it will come in the final exam, they will bring for you different molecules and they may ask you to label each one, like in SPQ number 2, I think. Okay, I will send you a copy of all of the SPQs. طيب, what about the protein? Protein, as you see here, it has a central carbon. Okay, attached to this central carbon are group, and to the right of the carbon there is hydroxyl. انتبه ان هم they may write the hydroxyl COOH. Okay, and I will draw another one now. COH, the hydroxyl, and to the left side there is the amino group NHH. This is the first one. Okay, or sometimes they may write it by this way. Here are COOH and NHH. It's correct and it's correct. Okay, this is the amino acid molecule. What about the levels of organization of the protein structure? The protein structure has 4 levels of the organization. Levels of organization of protein. The first one, number 1, we call it primary structure. In the primary structure, again, it's a sequence of the amino acids. يعني these are amino acids as you see. انتبهي ان these amino acids, they are bonded together with a peptide bond. So this bond, it's called peptide bond. Okay, then after the primary structure, what happens to this primary structure? The primary structure, number 2, form secondary structure. طيب, what about the difference between the primary and the secondary? The secondary structure is the secondary structure. The primary structure coils by this way and they form alpha helix, or they form a zigzag and we call it beta sheet. Okay, then the third level we call it tertiary structure. As I mentioned, tertiary means 3. So in the tertiary structure, they form a 3D shape. طيب, what's the difference between the tertiary structure and the secondary? Tertiary structure is a folded, like this, is a folded secondary structure. It's folded by this way. The last one, number 4, quaternary structure. The quaternary structure, it's made up of many tertiary structures together. Okay, يعني many, more than one or multiple tertiary structure bonded together, and they draw it by this way, and I will show you a picture. يعني عندي هنا many tertiary structures bonded together. Okay, the last one, or the last macromolecule, the last one is the nucleic acid. Nucleic acid. Okay, طبعا the nucleic acid, it's made up of many elements. These elements are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Pay attention in the main difference between the proteins and the nucleic acid هو الphosphorus is the main difference between them. Regarding the nucleic acid, the monomer of the nucleic acid, it's called nucleotide. Okay, the nucleotide or each nucleotide, it's made up of three parts. Okay, firstly, it's made up of sugar, we call it sugar, and bonded to the sugar, the phosphate group P, or phosphate group, and to the right there is a nitrogenous base. Sorry, this one, it's called nitrogen base, and they will ask you to label it, I'm sure. Okay, so this is the structure of the nucleotide. Then the function of the nucleotide, it's very easy. The main function of the nucleotide makes the DNA and RNA, or the genetic material. Okay, that's all for the first topic. So,
Miss, I have a question.
sure, تفضل.
Will they ask us to label what's each function of the protein, like the secondary structure and primary structure?
Yes, they may ask you to label the diagrams or to put them in order. Okay,
Okay, thank you, teacher.
but they will ask about it. طيب, girls, regarding the notes, of course, you all received a copy of the notes. These notes are very, very important. Okay, طيب, let's go through the notes together and tell me if there is anything you still don't understand. The first part, the chemical reactions, definition of the activation energy. Activation energy, the minimum amount of energy needed for a chemical reaction to start or to begin. This diagram represents the activation energy as I mentioned. The second, the KPI, the difference between exothermic and endothermic chemical reaction. Here, the exothermic chemical reaction releases energy, while endothermic chemical reaction absorb energy. Here, I wrote for you different examples of the exothermic and the endothermic. They may ask you about it. I'm not sure, but خلاص, you know the difference. If they wrote an equation, يعني for example, regarding the exothermic chemical reaction, A plus B, sorry, it's okay. A plus B forms, for example, C plus D plus energy. Okay, if the energy with the products, it will be exothermic, while if the energy with the reactants, it will be endothermic. Then here, as I mentioned, the graphs, they are very important. Regarding the enzymes, enzymes are biological catalysts. They speed up the rate of the chemical reactions without being consumed or without being used up. Then here, this diagram is very important. This graph is very important. It represents the reaction without the enzymes and with the enzymes. Without the enzymes, they have more, or they need more activation energy than the reaction with the help of the enzymes. طبعا enzymes, they are made up of proteins. Here the active site, a specific region of the enzyme where the substrate binds and the reaction occurs. طبعا when the substrate bind to the enzyme, they bind together like the lock and the key. This mechanism of the enzyme is very important. Okay, also the same diagram. Here, this is the water. Water, H2O. Oxygen has a slightly negative electrical charge. Hydrogen has positive electrical charge. Also, they bonded together with the hydrogen bond. Girls, انتبهي, pay attention. In الهيدروجين bond between two water molecules. يعني this one, This one, it's not the hydrogen bond. This one is a covalent bond. Okay, لأن الcovalent bond is within the water molecule. It bonds the oxygen with the hydrogen to form the water. Okay, and they will not ask you about it. The one that they will ask you about is the hydrogen bond. فالhydrogen bond between the water molecules, and it represented by dotted line. بس ما تعتمدي على dotted line. Okay, بس you must know that it's between two water molecules. Because of this hydrogen bond, the water has many properties. Cohesion, which is an attraction force between the water molecules. The formation of the water droplet on the leaf, it's caused by the cohesion, but not also when the rain fall to the ground or the precipitation. Rain يعني precipitation, okay? When the rain falls to the ground, they fall in the form of water droplets. What form the water droplets? Whenever you see the formation of the water droplet, so they are asking about the cohesion, not the adhesion. لكن وطبعا احنا عارفين ان cohesion او due to the cohesion, the surface tension of the water is caused, and it allows some insects like striders to walk on the water, like striders, like the mosquitoes, to walk on the water. While adhesion is an attraction force between the water molecules and the wall of the xylem or the wall of the tube. And when the narrow tube, or when the water rises in the narrow tube, it happens because of the adhesion, and we call it capillary action. Because of the capillary action and the cohesion, the water rises in the plant xylem. Then the pH. Solutions are classified into three groups: acids, bases, and neutral. pH neutral, so it's pure water. pH less than 7, it's acid, and they have higher or more concentration of the hydrogen ions. pH more than 7, so it's a basic or alkaline, and the concentration of the OH is more than the hydrogen ions. In the exam, they will bring for you a diagram like this, and they will ask you about the pH of the different substances, and also they may ask you which substance has higher pH or lower pH, and they may ask you which substance has more hydrogen ions. Yani, for example, there are two substances, the battery and the milk. Which one has more hydrogen ions? Of course, the one that has more hydrogen ions is the battery, لأن هي it has lower pH, okay? And also they may ask you regarding the blood and the soap مثلا, okay? Which one has more hydroxide ions? Of course, the soap has more hydroxide ions, okay? It's very important. Then the building blocks of life regarding the lipids. Girls, this is the lipid molecule. Pay attention in the exam. They may draw the whole lipid molecule, or they will draw only the fatty acid. Okay, this is the fatty acid. Also, the same as SBQ2. They may bring for you two fatty acids like this, يا بنات, okay? Here, like saturated and unsaturated. How could you differentiate between them? You have to search for the single bond and the double bond. If the double bond is present, so it's unsaturated and it's liquid at the room temperature. Regarding the lipids, the proteins, this is the protein monomer, this is the amino acid, and also it's the amino acid, okay? Again, each amino acid has a central carbon, this is the central carbon, and the amino group, and a carboxyl group. And also, you know, the levels of the organization. This is the primary structure. It's a chain of the amino acids. Amino acids are bonded together with a peptide bond. Then it coils and form alpha helix, or it form a zigzag, which is called beta sheet. and we call it secondary structure. When the secondary structure fold by this way to form a 3D shape, we call it tertiary structure. Many tertiary structures, as you see, they form quaternary structure. The last one, the nucleic acid. Nucleic acid, it's made up of many monomers. Monomers are called the nucleotides. Each nucleotide, it's made up of 5 carbon sugar, phosphate group, and the nitrogen containing base. This is the nucleotide. And again, the nucleotide make the DNA or RNA, or we can say that they store the genetic material. Now open the practice sheet. Let's solve the questions together. But this is the practice sheet. This is the big one. And also I have shared with you another a extra revision sheet. Inshallah, the other one or the new one, we'll solve it the night before the final exam بإذن الله. The most important thing while you are solving the questions, inshallah, in the exam, you must underline the keywords. Underlining the keywords will guide you to the answer quickly. Okay? Again, underline the keywords in the questions. The first one, use the graph below to answer questions 1 and 2. It's okay. What does the arrow marked with the letter X shows? They are asking about A, they are asking about this arrow. طبعا this arrow represents the activation energy or the minimum amount of energy needed to start the chemical reaction. Which of the following is the correct definition? فين keyword definition. Definition of energy labeled with the letter X. So again, this energy is the activation energy. What's the meaning of activation energy? Activation energy is the minimum energy required to start the reaction. So the correct answer is letter B. Then in number 3, which of the following correctly describes, underline the keywords, how the presence of the enzyme affect the reaction? So they are mainly asking about the effect of the enzymes. Okay? In this question, you have to read the 4 choices. You have enough time. You have 2 hours. So please read all of the choices carefully. A. The enzyme changes the equilibrium position of the reaction. Of course, it's wrong. Okay? طيب. The enzyme decreases, underline decreases, the activation energy required for the reaction to proceed. Yes, we took it. And the enzymes, they reduce, they decrease the activation energy. So to make sure that in B is the correct answer, please read the rest of the choices. The enzyme increases the overall energy. Of course, it's wrong. And the enzymes decrease, not increase. D. The enzyme provides additional energy. طبعا, of course, it's wrong. By this way, you are sure 100% and the letter B is the correct answer. Okay? Then number 4. Number 4, the graph shows an, يبقى معنى كده ان you have to back to the graph. A what reaction? طيب. Is it exothermic or endothermic? Here you have to stop. Check the graph. Here, the potential energy of the reactants is lower than the products. So this reaction is endothermic. So you have to cancel C and D. C and D, they are wrong. So you have to choose between A and B. Type. It's endothermic. Right here, endo. Okay? Reaction. Since the net amount of energy is A, طيب, what about the net amount of energy? The energy in the endothermic is absorbed or released? خلاص احنا you know it. Okay? So here
Absorb.
Yeah, so it's endothermic because the energy is absorbed. Then number five. Number five, which part of the enzyme, okay, bind with the substrate? They are asking which part of the enzyme bind to the substrate. خلاص احنا عارفين the active site bind to the active site of the enzyme. Then this diagram, again, my advice, okay, label the diagram first, then transfer your answers to the table down. Here, B. Let's start with A. A. Look at the arrow. I will zoom in. Here, the arrow is pointing to a just a part of the enzyme. What do we call it? We call it active site. So what is B? B is the enzyme itself. Then C. C, this is the substrate or the substance that bind to the active site. Again, what is the oh, في الامتحان if you forgot what its name, Miss said that this is the enzyme, right? Its name, enzyme. And what is this? Substrate. And it's a complex لأنه it's a big or two things together, so we call it enzyme substrate a complex. Then by the end of the reaction, what is formed? E or products. خلاص. Simply you can transfer them in the table. The question that I told you about. Enzymes are said to be specific. Explain. Tani, this question is out of 3. You should mention that, or the first, you will get the first point when you write that they have specific active site. You will hit the second point when you write they have complementary shape. You will hit the last one when you write they form a enzyme substrate complex. By this way you will get the 3 marks as I mentioned. طيب. Which of the following models show the correct polarity of the water? They are asking about the water polarity. Again, what causes the water polarity? Water polarity is caused because the water has a slightly negative electrical charge on the oxygen and a slightly positive electrical charge on the hydrogen. Here you have to pay attention, okay, because all of the diagrams are the same, but the difference is the distribution of the charges, okay. طب let's check the first one. Look here, oxygen has positive. No, it's wrong لأن الأكسجين has negative. So you have to search for which diagram has negative on the oxygen. The one that has negative on the oxygen is B and C, and this one is negative and this one is negative. يبقى here you have to check the hydrogen. Hydrogen is positive, so B is wrong, and the correct answer is letter C. Then number 9. Number 9. The structure formula of water molecule is HOH. It's okay, thank you, and we know it. With the oxygen atom attracting electrons more strongly than hydrogen atoms. It's okay. What conclusion, they are asking about your conclusion, can be made about the polarity of the water based on this structure? Again, for any question with long answer, you must read all of the choices, okay? A, water is not polar. No, it's wrong. Don't waste your time. Water is not polar. خلاص, don't waste your time in reading A and B. طب let's read C and D carefully. Water is polar because oxygen pulls electrons more strongly, creating slight charges on opposite end of the molecule. يعني this is the molecule, it has different or opposite charges. Yes, so C is the correct answer. But to make sure that and C is the correct answer, read B, D. Water is polar because electrons are shared equally. No. Electrons are not shared equally. There is uneven distribution of the electrons. Then number 10. Number 10, which of the following is the name of the bond indicated by the arrow in the diagram? They are asking about this bond. خلاص, you know what? This is the hydrogen bond. Then number 11. Which water property is shown in the diagram below? Girls, whenever you see tubes or different tubes with different diameters, so they are asking about the capillary action because the water rises in the narrow tube. So this is the capillary action, and you know that this capillary action is caused by a by adhesion. Then number 12. Number 12, a student places a drop of water on clean glass. But here you have to pay attention. Okay? Placed a drop of water on clean glass. Yani this is the clean glass and this is a drop of water. Okay? Slide and notice that the drop holds together. I will underline it, I highlight it. The drop holds together in a dome shape. يبقى معنى كده فين الكي ووردز اللي في السؤال؟ الكي ووردز here ان الدروب holds together in a dome shape. This is the dome shape. But also spread slightly along the surface. Okay? طيب, what about the question here? Which of the following best explains the observation? خلاص؟ طيب, let's read the choices. Cohesion causes water molecules to stick to each other. Yes. While adhesion causes them to stick to the glass. It's correct. It's okay, but to make sure that A is the correct answer, you must read the rest. The cohesive forces pull water molecules apart. No, it's a glue. So it stick them together. That's why B is wrong. C, water molecules repel same as pull the water apart. Also, it's wrong. Repel is the opposite of attract, girls. Okay? Water sticks to the glass. It's okay because of cohesion. It's completely wrong. Water stick to the glass because of the adhesion. So now you are 100% sure that in A is the correct answer. Then number 13, you have to define cohesion and adhesion. Again, cohesion is an attraction force between the water molecules, while adhesion is an attraction force between the water molecules and another substance. Here, you should label the diagram. Again, this is the xylem. Okay, think about it. This is water, number 1. Yes, it's a glue that stick the water together. So this is the cohesion. While 2, water stick to the wall. So this is a adhesion. We did number 14. Okay. Describe how these properties help transport. Simply, you will differentiate between the cohesion and adhesion. Okay? Then the pH. pH, it's a very simple, yani this question, it's a very, very simple and it's a direct question. Okay? Here they are asking about the type of the substance. Type, where is the blood? You have to locate the blood. Where is the blood? Here is the blood. طب what about the pH of the blood? The blood is 7.5, but they are asking acid, base, or neutral, so it's basically in here, it's more than 7. What about the cola? Cola 2.5, يعني less than 7, so it's it's acidic. Okay, what about banana? Where is the banana? Here. What about the pH of the banana? Banana pH is 5. It's less than 7. So it's acid. What about ammonia? Where is the ammonia? Here is the ammonia. It's a pH 12. So it's more than 7 or greater than 7. So it's a base. What about the water? Water is pH 7, and you know that pH 7 is neutral. خلاص, you did this question. Okay. Uh, Again, as I mentioned before, if they want to make it a little bit harder, they will ask you also, I can do it now, they will ask you about the concentration of hydrogen and the hydroxide. Okay, so what about the blood? It has more hydroxide. Cola, more hydrogen. Banana, hydrogen ions. Ammonia, hydroxide ions. Water, hydrogen is equal to the hydroxide ions. طيب, which one has the greatest or more hydrogen, ammonia or baking soda? Of course, the ammonia. Okay. طيب, here a student A student measures the pH of 4 different solutions and they get the results shown in the table below. Which list correctly orders the solutions from most acidic to most basic? بنات, most acidic يعني lowest pH. Okay, which one has the lowest pH? It's W. So W is the most acidic. Then after W, it's X because pH is 6. Then most basic يعني concentration of the hydrogen decreases and the OH increases, so it's number 8 or Y, and the highest one of the most basic is Z or number 13. Now check, the correct answer is letter A. A student A student tested 2 types of fats. It's okay. It's a new part. They are tested new types of fats. Great. Fat A stays solid. Solid. Start with the letter S. So it has a single bond and it's saturated. You will do the same in the exam. Okay. At room temperature. While B was liquid. يعني ايه liquid? Liquid means unsaturated and it has double bonds. When analyzing their structures, fat A had no double bond between the carbon atoms, while fat B had one or more double bonds. Which conclusion is most accurate? Again, let's read them. Both fat A and B are saturated? No. Both fats A and B are unsaturated? No, it's wrong. Fat A is saturated? Yes, but you have to read till the end. And the fat B is unsaturated? Yes, it's correct. طبعا D is the opposite, so D is wrong. Which of the following correctly describes the importance of steroid in the human body? Again, steroids make some hormones, so the correct answer is letter C. بنات, steroid with the hormones, so simply you have to match them together. Then this one they are asking you to predict whether the lipid shown in the diagram below is a solid or liquid. Girls, you have to check every bond, every single or double bond between the carbon. Check all of them and pay attention. We are not checking the bond between the carbon and the hydrogen. This is wrong. You are checking the carbon bond. طب check the first fatty acid. All of them, they are single. طيب, check the second one. All of them are single. Check the third one. Oh, look at this one. There is a double bond. Whenever you see the double bond, so it's unsaturated and it's liquid at the room temperature because it has a double bond. Here you have to describe the role of the phospholipid in the membranes. I will explain it tomorrow, not today, okay? This question is very, very important, okay? Before you look at the questions, let's label them. Which one has a hexagon shape? The one with the hexagon shape, the carbohydrates, and it's cancelled the KPI. Type number 2, look here, it has a central carbon, hydroxyl group, and amino group, so this is the amino acid. Look at this long chain of the fatty acid or the lipid. Type, look at this one, it has P phosphate. So it's a nucleotide. It can be DNA or RNA. By this way, you can answer the questions very fast. طبعا here which number in the diagram represents the building block of the protein. Protein is number 2 and number 2 is the amino acid. Which number in the diagram represents the structure of the nucleic acid. The nucleic acid is represented by number 4. Then number 24, which of the following is the type of bond found in the proteins? بنات amino acids are bonded together by a peptide bond. Explain how the protein in the tertiary structure differs from in the quaternary structure. Tertiary structure here is one folded protein, لكن ال quaternary structure is two or more folded proteins أو two or more tertiary structures. Here you have to identify them. This one is the alpha helix and this one is the beta sheet. خلاص, you know the difference between them. They are asking you which of the following is the function of the nucleic acid. Nucleic acid like the DNA and the RNA, both of them, they store and they communicate the genetic information. An analysis of unknown sample. There is unknown sample, okay? It's made up of phosphate group. Again, as I mentioned, whenever you see phosphate group, so they are asking about the nucleic acid. You have to match them together. Which of the following are among the types of the nucleic acid? ADH, we didn't take it. DNA, yes. RNA, yes. So the correct answer is letter C. Number 30 will come in the final. Okay? Number 1, Cholayan. Number 1, this is the phosphate group. Phosphate group. Number 3, it's the sugar. And number 2, nitrogen base. That's all for the first topic. Banat, do you have any question?